Story 1. In China, though not Chinese, there are some economic concerns, but my life goes on as normal. Generally fine, though after reading the book for 2 weeks, a student wanted to confirm that hobbits aren't real. She's 13. Story 2. New Zealand here. We are currently run by a moronic former chief executive officer who has absolutely no idea what he is doing and is regularly taken advantage of by his ministers. A man whose only goal in government is to be a kingmaker, though he is admittedly a good foreign minister when it comes to representing us on the world stage. We also have a libertarian individual who criticizes Te Pati Maori for performing a haka during the swearing-in ceremony without running it by the Speaker of the House, only to attempt to drive a Land Rover up the stairs of Parliament without informing anyone, let alone the Speaker. He had to be stopped by his security, who talked to him like a child who had climbed onto some shelves. That's just the basics, and we still have the better part of 2 years before we can vote them out, because we don't elect governments in this country. We just vote the current ones out. Story 3. Canada here. It's very difficult to afford life right now. I make way more than my parents ever made and can only afford maybe a quarter of what they were able to get off a single income with 3 children. Phone bills are expensive, as well as internet, car insurance, gasoline, electric bills, and food. I don't really like this way of living. Story 4. Serbia has beautiful student protests, which may topple the dictatorship. Officially, they are demanding that democratic institutions do their job, which they haven't done in years, and they refuse to negotiate with the dictator because he has no official authority on any of the issues. It is still rough, but a little hopeful after a decade of terror. Story 5. I am writing to bring attention to the ongoing protests in Greece against government corruption and the systematic efforts to silence the truth regarding the tragic train collision of 2023, which claimed the lives of 57 people. This devastating accident occurred due to the absence of a remote management system for trains, an issue that stems from years of governmental negligence and corruption. Instead of taking responsibility and ensuring accountability, the Greek government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mitsotakis, has actively attempted to cover up the failures that led to this disaster. The people of Greece are demanding justice, transparency, and reforms to prevent such tragedies in the future. We refuse to allow corruption to endanger lives any longer. Our protests aim to hold those in power accountable and to prevent further suppression of the truth. We urge the international community to support our call for justice and to bring attention to this critical issue. The lives lost must not be forgotten, and those responsible must be held accountable. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Your support in spreading awareness is invaluable. This petition was started by families of the victims who want to remove the asylum status for members of parliament. Story 6. We just had a school shooting for the second time in our history, and yesterday a suspected terrorist planning an attack was arrested. Gang violence is still going strong. It sounds like a lot of negatives, but it's better than it sounds. It's still bad, but better than it sounds. Story 7. We are on our way back to the first half of the last century. So basically like America, but as is tradition, we are a bit behind. Greetings from Germany. Story 8. The other day I was talking with a few of my friends who all tend to lean left on the political scale, and they were discussing how America is in decline. The common talking point about moving to another country came up. We all discussed which country we ought to move to before quickly realizing that just about every other country in the world is facing its own set of serious issues. The United States may be getting the most coverage at the moment, but the entire world is in a state of major change. Story 9. Part of Brazil is suffering from a heat wave reaching 40 degrees Celsius with temperatures feeling like nearly 70 degrees Celsius in some areas. Also, coffee prices have skyrocketed last month due to severe weather impacting our crops. Story 10. I was in Caserta, Italy, recently. I went and toured the palace where Star Wars, The Phantom Menace was filmed, several of the Naboo palace scenes, that is. Story 11. Well, if Germany continues doing whatever they've been doing for the past few years, they're right on track to starting World War III again. More than 1/4 of the population are voting for the Nazi Party, which has now become the second strongest party. So yeah, it's not that great. Story 12. Ireland here, not too bad. The cost of living is fairly high at the moment, and the availability of affordable housing is scarce. I wouldn't like to be going to the bank nowadays for a mortgage. My eldest son is 25, and I can see him living at home for another few years. Story 13. Norway. Overall, pretty good, safe, and quiet, but there are a few things most of us aren't too happy about. Donald Trump becoming president instead of an inmate, and all the consequences of that. Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. The rise of more extreme right parties in Europe. Our weak currency, high inflation, and interest rates. We went from free electricity to a more serious monthly expense because we are now part of the European market. Story 14. Here in southeastern Brazil, we're dealing with absurd levels of heat combined with significant flooding. It honestly makes me feel like humanity doesn't have long left. I don't remember the last time I wore even a long sleeve. Story 15. In Sweden, there are rising tensions due to its proximity to Russia. However, last year they managed to dismantle a massive crime organization. All the top leaders were arrested. While this seemed positive, now aspiring criminals are trying to make a name for themselves. So, although overall crime is down, it has become more noticeable as people continue to engage in shootings and bombings. Racism is significantly increasing, which is concerning as the population is aging and declining at the moment. Otherwise, it is not so bad. The country still boasts beautiful nature. The people are pleasant if you make an effort to speak the language. There is definitely a sense of cohesion. Overall, it could be better. It could be worse. Story 16. We are not doing well. However, I do need an American perspective for a moment, so please come back. I got in trouble for posing this as a question, so I'm asking it in a comment. What is a 401k retirement savings plan? I've seen that mentioned a lot on Reddit. Also, why are people required to split it if they divorce their spouse? All Google tells me is that it's something about taxes or pensions, but it doesn't explain why it has to be split. Story 17. I believe China is watching how the West reacts to Ukraine and Gaza. Europe is most likely arming up in anticipation of an isolated United States, which historically is never a good thing. Many economies are looking to migrate to new markets and decrease their North American footprint, which might stimulate some economic recession until the markets migrate. Probably not a lot has changed in Kazakhstan. Edit, you will probably start seeing some global legislation reigning in social media, cookies, and data usage since it can be used as a weapon more powerful than a nuclear bomb. That would be the hope. Story 18. Sudan is suffering from the world's largest displacement rate. From a war driven by foreign interests, United Arab Emirates. Hopefully, it gets better one day so I can return home. The airport is non-existent now, so most people, including my family, had to flee to neighboring countries on tight buses with no air conditioning for more than 48 hours. All this happened overnight without warning. Story 19. German here. Right-wing extremists Alternative for Germany, AfD, are probably going to get over 20% of the votes here. The centrist party Christian Democratic Union, CDU, has for the first time enforced a majority for a parliamentary motion on migration laws with them. Many protests are happening. So all in all, not too well. Story 20. In the Philippines, Vice President Sara Duterte was impeached by the lower house of Congress by an overwhelming majority, with over 200 representatives voting to impeach her. Her impeachment trials will begin after the election. Vice President Sara was impeached due to threatening to kill the president and his first family, b. misuse of public funds, c. d. treason. Additionally, President Bongbong Marcos has formally declared a political war against the Dutertes this election. Currently, most of the Marcos lineup has a significant chance of winning the congressional election. If they gain the majority, they can remove Sara from office permanently. They also have no issue with the opposition, as the opposition also dislikes the Dutertes. Story 21. Things are comfortable in Hungary. There might be snow tonight. The probable collapse of the German economy might result in some problems this year, but nothing that we cannot handle. Story 22. We're still being bombed left and right in Lebanon by the Zionist regime, even during the ceasefire the media announced, but at least our new government seems to be a bit more stable than the last one. Story 23. Germany is trying to outlaw the anti-immigration party. Some people will tell you that the party members are secret Nazis. Some people will tell you the ban is because the other political parties are fighting to hang on to relevance. I personally think both views are extremist. Story 24. We feel like we have been hijacked by the United States. Every day there's some new crazy out of the blue and either immoral, illegal, or just stupid new idea. From Greenland to white, red, and blue land? What the hell are you putting in your soup? Story 25. Our version of the conservative-leaning party is leaning into the culture war business, getting people riled up. Kids are becoming more violent in the suburbs, which used to be less of a problem, but the socioeconomic divide keeps widening. Education levels are dropping. We're losing skilled teachers in the wake of COVID-19. Disasters are multiplying. Fire seasons are longer. And the worms in my garden have disappeared. I guess my roof is in a new storm corridor. Doctors can't cover overheads by just bulk billing, so everyone's upset that they now have to pay at the doctor's office or queue up at the few bulk billing clinics left. Progress is creeping forward, infrastructure is getting built, and satellite hospitals are opening, but somehow everyone is just angrier. Fewer babies, people feeling threatened by immigration that keeps our hospitals staffed and our population growing, but houses aren't being built quickly enough. It used to take 20 minutes to get to work, and now it takes an hour. More people are living paycheck to paycheck than ever, with all their money going to keep a roof over their heads. There's an interesting rise in genuine anti-Semitism, probably being nudged along by foreign actors. No one has the energy to care about the environment much at the moment because they're feeling the financial pinch too much, and it's more about the cheapest possible outcome, while big minds throw their money and influence around in the political sphere. Anyway, that's what all the people are angry about, and whoever can convince voters that they'll resolve those issues will probably win the next election. My state went with the adult time for adult crimes leader, and was also still upset with the opposition COVID-19 leader, even though they replaced her with a different leader before the election. I'm just playing Stardew Valley though, and I'm pretty lucky to have a roof over my head, a semi-stable job, and I could afford to fix my car and also buy some fresh fish for dinner. Story 26. There are no separate countries anymore. We are one world, and what happens here or there affects everyone. We are billions, together standing on common ground that has no borders. It is the struggle to survive this life, day to day. Billions struggle so a few hundred can hoard dynastic wealth so great they could not spend it all in 50 lifetimes. Humanity has failed. Story 27. Canada is not doing so well. Our healthcare system is abysmal. I have been waiting 2 weeks to get a surgery, and they keep delaying it. I have a broken collarbone to the point that it is almost piercing through the skin, and every day I need to fast in hopes that I get surgery, but they always push the surgery due to bandwidth issues. Story 28. Poland here. It is cold and gray, but apart from that, it is pretty okay as long as you ignore the media and the endless squabbling of politicians. It's always interesting to see polls where one question is if the situation in the country is bad, good, getting worse, or improving, and another is asking if your life is good, bad, getting worse, or improving. Invariably, the majority of people think that the country is going to hell, but somehow the same majority thinks their lives are actually pretty good. Story 29. Wilders, known for fewer Moroccans, threatened to disrupt the coalition over a refugee deal that reportedly neither achieves his goal of reducing immigration nor simplifies managing it. The nitrogen crisis is once again being deferred to the next coalition, hindering efforts to address the housing crisis. Inflation remains extremely high without any signs of improvement, and it is often blamed on workers seeking higher wages rather than corporate price gouging. I don't have high hopes for the future. Story 30. Well, besides our stupid populist government being more incompetent than ever, I still have dry feet, not a guarantee in Holland, and food on the table, so pretty good all things considered. Story 31. We are waiting on 40 centimeters of snow tonight and tomorrow. So, good news for students since schools might have to close tomorrow. I am not a student, so I will still be expected to work by my boss, which is me. Story 32. Ecuadorian here. We just had our presidential elections, which ended up in a tie between 2 of the 16 candidates. So we have 2 more months of lovely suspense until the next election round. Also, suspense since in my opinion they are both as bad as the other but in different fun ways. Crime is still happening, health services are not working as they should, lots of unemployment and underemployment, and corruption at each level of the state. The usual. But hey, at least the weather right now is nice, and the land is fertile and productive, so that's good. Story 33. We have terrible candidates here in the Philippines, especially in my hometown. Because the vice president is being impeached, people there have gone insane and are willing to vote for a cult leader. A cult leader because they are an ally of the impeached vice president. I don't want to go back to my hometown because it is a disaster. Another context is that my hometown's governor was one of those who signed for the vice president's impeachment.